A student once approached the Buddha with 10 burning questions. Why does the universe exist? Does the self survive death? Is the cosmos infinite? He demanded answers before he would practice. The Buddha replied, "If an arrow pierces you, do you wait to learn who shot it before pulling it free? Why refuse to answer? Because some questions aren't doors, they're chains." The Buddha saw exactly what carrying them does to a human life. Today I'll show you what he saw, and why releasing the question might matter more than finding the answer. One day, in the north of India, in the region of Kosala, the monsoon had finally passed. The earth was slowly drying out, and a pale green light filtered through freshly washed leaves. The Buddha and his disciples were staying at the edge of a small village. Some sat in quiet meditation. Others walked slowly along the tree line, breathing in the cool air. But one young monk couldn't be still. He sat apart from the others, brow furrowed, jaw tight, like a man carrying something he couldn't put down. A wind moved through the branches. A bird called out somewhere in the distance. All around him, the world was quiet. And yet inside him, something kept turning. Eventually he stood. He walked toward the Buddha with the kind of step that only comes after you've held something back for a very long time, and finally decided you can't hold it any longer. He stopped a few paces away, pressed his palms together, and opened his mouth, then closed it again, the way a man does when he has rehearsed his words 100 times and suddenly finds that none of them are right. The Buddha looked up at him, not with the eyes of someone waiting to be impressed, but with the quiet patience of a man watching rain fall into a still pond. And so the monk sat down in the dust and said the only thing that was true. "Teacher, I don't know how to rest." The Buddha did not answer right away. He simply picked up a small stone from the ground beside him, held it for a moment, and then set it down. "You see how I held that stone?" he said at last. "My hand did not grip it. It simply received it." The monk looked at the stone, then at his own hands, still pressed tight against his knees, knuckles pale as river clay. The young monk's name was Malunkyaputta. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't careless. He had practiced faithfully since the day he arrived. But deep in his chest, something had never settled, a set of questions the Buddha had never answered. Does the universe go on forever, or does it end? Is the soul the same as the body, or separate? What happens to us after we die? He had asked before. Each time the Buddha had simply said, "That is not something I have answered." Nothing more. Today, Malunkyaputta sat down before the Buddha and spoke plainly. "If you know the answers to these questions, tell me. If you don't, say so. But if you will not answer, I am leaving. I cannot continue practicing without knowing why." It was a bold thing to say, but the Buddha didn't seem angry. He looked at the young monk for a long moment quietly. Then he asked, "Did I ever promise to answer those questions before you began practicing? Was that the agreement between us?" Malunkyaputta went silent. "No." "Then let me ask you something. Are you suffering right now?" "Yes." "Are you growing older? Do you get sick? Will you die?" "Yes, all of that." "Then let us talk about that." And the Buddha told a story. Suppose a man is struck by a poisoned arrow. His friends rush to find a doctor. The doctor arrives and is ready to remove the arrow, but the man holds up his hand. "Wait," he says, "before you take it out, I need to know who shot me. What family were they from? How tall were they? What was the bow made of? What kind of feathers were on the arrow? What was the tip made from?" The Buddha paused. Malunkyaputta, that man would die. He would die with the arrow still inside him, still asking questions, never having let anyone help him. Malunkyaputta had no words. Whether the universe is eternal or not, you are suffering right now. Whether the soul outlasts the body or not, you are aging right now. Before any answer to those questions arrives, your life will have moved on. What I teach is this: what suffering is, where it comes from, how it can change, and the path that leads somewhere different. Nothing else. Because nothing else changes the fact that the arrow is in you, right now. Malunkyaputta sat for a long time after that. The wind moved through the leaves again. Somewhere nearby, someone was drawing water from the well. The frustration he had carried for so long, the feeling that he couldn't move forward without his answers. He was only beginning to understand what that frustration actually was. It was not a doorway he had been waiting to walk through. It was itself the arrow. He thought of all the mornings he had sat in meditation, half present, one hand still reaching back toward the unanswered questions, like a man checking a wound. All that time he had called it preparation. He saw now that it had another name. He didn't stand up, and for the first time in a long while, that was enough. Outside, the man at the well had stopped pulling the rope. He was just standing there, looking at the water. Malunkyaputta watched him through the trees and thought, even he knows something I am only now learning. That the water is there, that the bucket works, that thirst is real. The questions were still there. They had not gone anywhere, but they sat differently now, the way a stone sits at the bottom of a clear river, present, harmless, no longer blocking the current. This story is 2,500 years old, and yet it lands like it was told yesterday. Maybe because we are all, in some way, Malunkyaputta. Why did this happen to me? Was any of it worth it? How did I end up here? We carry these questions the way you carry something heavy in both arms, unable to put it down, unable to move freely. And without an answer, we feel we can't take the next step. But that is exactly what the Buddha is pointing at. The pain doesn't come only from what happened. It comes from the belief that until you understand why it happened, you are not allowed to move. That belief, quiet, invisible, completely taken for granted, is what stretches the suffering out. The arrow hurts because it's in you, but refusing to remove it until you know who fired it. That is a second layer of suffering you are choosing, even if it doesn't feel like a choice. We tend to think of learning from experience as understanding the experience, finding its meaning, tracing its cause, making sense of the whole thing. We tell ourselves, once I understand, I can move on. But what if the search for that understanding is the very thing keeping you stuck? The Buddha's idea of learning looks a little different. It doesn't begin with understanding. It begins with looking honestly at what is happening right now, not explaining it, not solving it, just seeing it. Not why is this happening to me, but what is actually here, in this moment. That shift from the closed fist of I need an answer first to the open hand of let me just see what's here is where something begins to loosen. A man sits in a hospital waiting room. He doesn't know yet what the doctor will say, and in that not knowing, he is either white-knuckling every second, or he is breathing, noticing the hum of the lights, the smell of the coffee going cold in his hand, the way his own chest rises and falls. Same room, same uncertainty, completely different experience. That is not resignation. That is the beginning of a kind of freedom that doesn't require the situation to change first. And it's available in the waiting room, in the traffic, in the conversation you keep replaying at 2 a.m. The open hand doesn't ask for better circumstances. It asks only that you stop demanding an answer before you allow yourself to be present. So what does this look like in an ordinary life? Think about work. You gave years to a project, really gave yourself to it. Then one day, with no warning, leadership pulled the plug. It was unfair, it hurt, and on top of the hurt came the questions: why did this happen? Who decided? Did I do something wrong? Was it all meaningless? And until those questions have answers, something inside you freezes. What's the point of trying again if I can't even understand what went wrong? But the arrow is still in you. Before you can understand it all, you might need to simply notice. I'm wounded, I'm tired, I'm angry. Not to fix any of that, just to let it be true for a moment, without immediately reaching for an explanation. Or think about friendship. Someone you trusted, someone you thought you knew, pulled away without explanation, or did something that felt like a betrayal. The deeper the connection, the deeper the question: why did they do that? Was I wrong about them from the start? What does this say about me? And because those questions have no clean answers, you find yourself hesitating before getting close to anyone new. The unanswered why becomes a wall. But here too, the poisoned arrow structure is at work. You were hurt. That's real. But the wound isn't staying open because the answer hasn't come. It may be staying open because somewhere you've decided, I am not allowed to heal until I understand. Or consider the body, your own aging, or a diagnosis, or watching someone you love lose their health. Why is this happening? What did I do wrong? What is this supposed to mean? The Buddha never said those feelings were wrong. He simply pointed out, whether you find the meaning or not, your life is happening right now. And how you meet it, with a closed fist or an open hand, that part is within reach. A man once sat at his dying father's bedside for weeks, waiting, not just for death, but for some final conversation that would make sense of a difficult relationship between them. The conversation never came, and afterward, he said the strangest thing, that somewhere in the last few days, he had simply stopped waiting for it, and in that stopping, had found himself actually present, holding his father's hand, watching the light change in the room, aware that this was what was being offered. He hadn't gotten his answer. He had gotten something else. That something else has no good name in English, but most people who have touched it recognize it immediately when it's described. It isn't resolution. It isn't acceptance in the greeting card sense. It's more like the difference between a hand straining to catch water and a hand resting open on the surface. The water is the same, but something in the gesture has changed. If this resonates with you, here is one small thing you might try. Tonight, when things are quiet, take a piece of paper. Write down one question you've been carrying, something you've been waiting to have answered before you can move. Why did that happen? Was I wrong to trust them? Does any of this matter? Write it down. Then, underneath it, write this. While I wait for this answer, what am I not letting myself do? Whatever comes up in response to that second question, that is the arrow, not the unanswerable question. The thing you've been holding back from, the life you've been pausing, waiting for a permission that may never come in the form you expect. The Buddha's monks had a practice sometimes translated as observing feeling tones, simply checking in once a day with what is actually present. Not analyzing it, not fixing it, just asking, what is here right now? Tiredness, grief, a low quiet anger, fear. You don't have to do anything with what you find. Just let it be named. Just let it be seen. This won't make the questions disappear. It won't hand you the answers you've been waiting for. But it can shift something, slowly, quietly, from the tense place of I can't go on until I understand, towards something softer. I am here. This is what's here with me, and maybe I can take one step anyway. Not because you figured it out, but because the arrow doesn't have to stay in forever while you wait. A monk was once asked how he had managed to keep practicing through 30 years of unanswered doubt. He thought for a moment, then said, I stopped waiting at the door and started living in the house. The door, of course, was still there, and some mornings he still stood at it, knocking. But there was also breakfast, and cold water, and the sound of rain, and these two turned out to be his life. The questions didn't leave him. A question for you, if you're willing to sit with it. What is the question you've been waiting to have answered, before you let yourself move on? And what have you been holding still while you wait? You don't have to answer out loud. You don't even have to answer now. Just turn toward it, gently, for a moment. Sometimes simply noticing that the arrow is there, just that, is enough to let something shift, quietly, on its own. A monk once spent 3 years waiting for his teacher to explain the meaning of a particular koan, not realizing he had stopped walking the path entirely, sitting at the same bend in the road, watching the same patch of light move across the same stone. When his teacher finally passed by, he didn't offer an explanation. He simply kept walking. And the monk, almost without deciding to, stood up and followed. The path did not change. The stone did not change. Only the waiting did. And perhaps that is all that is ever asked of us. Not to solve the question, but to stop making it a door we refuse to walk through until someone else unlocks it. To learn from experience, we first need to open ourselves to change. And we explored exactly that in a previous teaching on acceptance and what the Buddha teaches about chasing what disappears. You'll find the link in the description below. One thing that matters. Today we walked through the parable of the poisoned arrow together. Malankiyaputta wasn't weak. He was serious. So serious about finding the truth that he couldn't stop asking. And the Buddha didn't dismiss him for it. He simply turned him, gently, toward the suffering that was actually there. In this moment, in this body, in this life. Learning from experience doesn't always mean finding the meaning hidden inside it. Sometimes meaning takes years to appear. Sometimes it never quite arrives in the shape we hoped for. But what is already here, what you're feeling right now, underneath the questions, that is available to you. Right now. Before the answer comes. Before the answers come, before the story makes sense. Before you've figured out who you're supposed to be on the other side of all this. There is this moment. And in this moment, you can look at the arrow. Thank you for being here today. If you're watching this while carrying something heavy, something you've been waiting to understand before you let yourself breathe again, I'm glad this found you. I hope it helps, even a little. See you next time. You don't have to name it yet. You don't have to know what it means. Just, for a moment, feel where it lives in your body, the way you might notice a stone in your shoe before you've decided what to do about it. That's enough, that's where it starts. Sometimes the most honest thing we can do is simply sit down beside the weight of it, the way a tired traveler might rest on a roadside bench. Not because the journey is over, but because the legs need a moment before they carry you further. A woman once told me she spent 3 years waiting to grieve her father properly, until she understood why he was the way he was. By the time the understanding came, she had missed 3 years of the grief that was already asking to move through her. The arrow doesn't wait for the right conditions. It is already there, already asking to be seen, not explained, not justified, not earned through understanding, but simply met, the way you might meet a friend at the door before you've thought of anything useful to say. Pause. Whose face came to mind while you were listening today? One story a day. In a week, your words will change. In a month, your eyes will change. In a year, the same world will look completely different.